In today's Take a Day, I want to talk about the X Factor for the Clippers and how the X Factor for the Clippers have finally came alive. Now, before we get into that, please like, subscribe, also hit the notification bell just so you can get the newest and the bonus content first. We put out content every day, so you won't miss any content here. Let's just go ahead and jump right into this. So, last night looking at the Clippers play the Timberwolves, they had a lot of players in double figures. Everybody played up to standard. Everybody played exactly how I thought they should. Everybody played with the intensity, and they started fast. They didn't waste time. They came ready to play. They weren't down by X amount of points by halftime. They were riding the game how they're supposed to be, and they played really, really well overall. And playing like that against a team like the Timberwolves, it may not say much to a lot of people, but I mean, it is a stepping stone in regards to building confidence and possibly get on with a winning streak. Now they play the Timberwolves tomorrow night as well, but I mean, of course, that's going to be another test because you're playing a team twice. It's hard to beat a team back-to-back nights. It just is sometimes. But I mean, definitely, it's still a game the Clippers should win, but we'll see how it goes. But Paul George ends up with 32 points again. Paul George been putting up really good numbers this year. I don't think his shooting percentage is as good as I'd like it to be, but I mean, he's definitely putting up good numbers, and he's definitely been putting up MVP caliber type numbers. And we all know Paul George can do things like that. So, he's one of those vital pieces, on a team that can definitely, score with the best of them. And he just had to really prove it in the postseason. And last year, I'm not going to say he proved everything in the postseason, but he proved a lot, in the postseason. He proved that he can come through at times and make big shots, and be a part of a team that can possibly win, but there are times with Paul George where you say the opposite. And, looking at Paul George last night, I definitely saw, a player, who was exertive once again and wants to go out there and prove to everybody that he can play. But my only thing with that is sometimes when you try to prove everybody wrong, you're going to make mistakes along the way. And when you do that, sometimes, the mistakes you make are very crucial when you're trying to prove people wrong. So you got to go about it the right way. And, you have to just collectively play the best you can. I think that's what Paul George is doing right now in the season. And I think that, like I said, he could be shooting a lot more efficient. But I mean, like I said, that has to just come with time, and we just have to see if that happens, for him. But as far as, like I said, the whole team, everybody played, pretty well. And it was really from top to bottom, everybody really chipped in. But when I talk about the X factor for the Clippers. Now you could say there's a few X factors. You could say Luke Kennard, you could say Terrence Mann, you could say Reggie Jackson, you could say, maybe Marcus Morris. But to me, last night specifically, when you looked at that game and when you looked at this season so far, which is very minimal games played, they haven't played that many games this season, but so far this season, the one player that a lot of people were kind of looking for to be the X factor and, show up and play and show out the way he did last year in the playoffs was Reggie Jackson. Reggie Jackson, has been playing, somewhat okay, but not the way I expected him to play going into this season based upon what he gave in the playoffs last season. He didn't play up to that level, that standard. And when you do that, or should I say when you don't do that coming into a season where a lot is riding on you and everybody's really, looking at you to be one of the main guys on the team who is going to provide offense on a consistent basis and shooting at a pretty decent percentage while doing it. And when you don't come in the season and accomplish those things, or at least starting off that way, accomplishing those type things, it raises a lot of eyebrows. And I feel like that's exactly what happened with Reggie Jackson going into this season. The Clippers' slow start also has some to do with him, because he hasn't been shooting the ball very well. His shooting percentage kind of dipped a little bit at the start of this season, and he hasn't really been shooting the three ball overly great. But I mean, not overly bad either. I'm not going to knock Reggie like that, but at the same time, I still expect more out of him. I expect more consistency and efficiency out of Reggie because, for one thing, he's a very, versatile type player. He can get to the rim anytime he wants to. He can step back with a three. His shot is pretty nice once it's falling. He's got one of the, prettiest, shots in the league I think I've seen, you know what I'm saying? He's nice with the handle too, so it's not like Reggie, doesn't have a multitude of skills. It's just that he has to put it all together, and he has to put those type of performances together like he did last night more consistently going into this season, because Kawhi Leonard's not around to make up for a lot of the points that he usually doesn't have to score because Kawhi Leonard's there. Now, that's a hard thing to do. I do understand that. I'm not even knocking Reggie for, some of the games he hasn't played very well, because you're asking him to step into a role that he never played, or at least he hasn't played in a long time, so it's hard, it's hard, definitely, especially, you do it for a while, and then, Kawhi Leonard comes back. Now you got to revert mentally back to the third best player on the team. So I definitely understand a lot that Reggie has, anchoring and going through his brain in regards to how the process is going right now and how it will go when Kawhi comes back. But at the same time, that's the one player I really thought that would actually blast off this season. And last night, I think might open up something for him going forward, because the 29-point explosion that he had is something that he's definitely capable of doing, because he definitely has the talents to do so. And, to get more consistency out of him, he may not have to score 29 points, every game, because that would be awfully a lot to ask him to do. But he should at least be able to score 21 points a game, shooting at a pretty decent clip, and, getting everybody in their sets and making, pretty decent passes when he needs to, and allowing the shots and the offense to come to him when given the opportunity. And that's really the main thing that Reggie has to think about when he's out there on the court. He can score the ball at will because the ball's in his hands a lot of the times. So, and my thing with the situation with him and Paul George, as far as like being the number one, number two, honestly, I think Reggie Jackson is the Clippers closer. I really believe he is. I mean, I don't, a lot of people may disagree with me when I say that, but when you look at it, like, I think, what was it, last night's game or the game before? I mean, he literally made the shot to end the game. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that one time is going to make him the closer, but I've seen him even in a couple of games last year, in the playoffs. He was the reason for the comebacks. He was the reason why they closed a lot of games. And he was the main reason why they stayed afloat in a lot of games, because of his offense and how he was playing, unconsciously. But I'm telling you, I really think he is the Clippers closer, because, Paul George can be so inconsistent sometimes. He can go one quarter 10 for 10, and the next quarter he can go 0 for 10. But Reggie Jackson usually, I mean, the years I've seen him play before, he has his moments where he's not as consistent, but I've seen him close games like for the Pistons, and other teams he's been on. Even with OKC, even his younger days, he closed a few games out for them and made some big shots, and, knocked down some big shots and made a name for himself, and all those type of things. So it's like, when you think about that, Reggie is I definitely look at him as like, to be the Clippers closer. Of course, Paul George is the best player on the team as of right now, of course, until Kawhi comes back. But, I definitely think Reggie is their closer. And for him to be that, he's going to have to make good decisions down the stretch. And he's going to have to execute plays at a high level down the stretch, kind of like he did last year in the playoffs. He's going to have to do that same thing. But now you're asking him to do that for a whole season rather than just a month or two, whatever, playoffs. So it's like, it's a little bit different to ask somebody to do that for 82 games. It's just a little bit longer. It's a lot longer of a process. And, it's a lot of different teams and a lot of different nights, back to backs. It's really hard to do that. But I mean, I think Reggie can, get a rhythm and get going. And I think his X factor wisdom can be what the Clippers need to stay afloat in this season, of course, because even if Marcus Morris, when he gets healthier or whatever the situation may be, with him or whoever else on the team, Terrence Mann, whoever decides to step up as a third guy continuously or consistently, Reggie Jackson could be that guy who can drop 23, 24 points a game with PG 29 points a game, and, maybe somebody else chip in with 12 to 15 points consistently, and other guys, get their points here and there. I mean, the Clippers could be, definitely a playoff team, and they definitely can, work their way through the season until Kawhi comes back and be in a playoff seeding spot, when Kawhi Leonard arrives back. And that's just the goal. And that's the goal the Clippers should be looking at. And in order for them to achieve that, they're going to need Paul George and Reggie Jackson to come along for the ride and be as consistent and efficient as possible, because the schedule is only going to get harder, and the days are only going to get longer. It seem like because when you got to play a 5-game road trip, things like that, you're fatigued, you're tired, you're injured probably, but you have to find a way to come through. And these are those are the things what makes a really great team, if they're able to do that. But the number 1 and number 2 player has to be consistent. So Paul George, you're gonna have to be more consistent, in regards to efficiency, better shooting. You have to be more consistent in regards to your shot selection. Sometimes Paul George takes shots that are ill-advised, and it hurts the team rather than helps them. But I mean, of course, that's the ebbs and flows of a game. Paul George should be able to figure that out because he's been a great player in the league for a while. Reggie Jackson's been in the league for a long time, so he's a veteran. He knows what it takes to go through the motions of a season and play and, sustain your game from one game to the next just to make it to the end of the season, to enter the playoffs, as fresh as possible and be, in rhythm as much as possible. So with these things known, those 2 players have to play very, very important roles, not only being the top scorers on the team, but they have to be more efficient in shot selection and, just in the shot making as well. But to me, like I said, Reggie Jackson, if he can continue to, have games, similar to this, like I said, maybe not have 29-point games, but, he may have a few of them in there. I mean, definitely he might even have a couple 30-point games this season. But if he can continue to play like this, I definitely think with that type of edge and mentality and going at teams and scoring and getting his rhythm going, I definitely think the Clippers might have a lot to say, when it's all said and done, because if they can get the offense out of these 2 consistently, and you put the big dog back in there, Kawhi Leonard, with them playing at this pace, throughout the season and getting in rhythm, more in touch. And then Kawhi Leonard comes back and puts the icing on the cake. I mean, this team really might be a little bit more dangerous than what some people might look at them as, because now I hear analysts talk about the Warriors and, of course, the Nets, the Lakers. And, I even hear some, don't even forget about the Phoenix Suns, and, of course, the Bucks, too, because they won the championship. But nobody's really talking about the Clippers like that. And it's okay. The Clippers should be happy with flying under the radar, because if they can find a way to get everybody healthy and get everybody on point, they might be the team that might represent the West, while a lot of people's not even speaking on them. But hey, that's my take on the situation. Leave any comments in the comment section. As always, let me know what you think about what I said. Do you agree or disagree? And we could talk about it. And Cali out.